look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a woman being interviewed by a market researcher in a health club about her membership of the club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Oh, excuse me. I wonder if you'd have the time to take part in some market research.
What's it about?
About this club and your experiences and opinions about being a member. It'll take less than 5 minutes.
Oh, OK then, as long as it's quick.
Can I start by taking your name?
It's Selina Thompson.
Is that Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. And what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm an accountant, but I'm between jobs at the moment.
I understand. But that's the job I'll put down on the form. And would you mind my asking which age group you fall into? Below 30, 31 to 50, and above?
Over 50, I think we can safely say.
Great, thanks. And which type of membership do you have?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean how long of...
No, is it a single-person membership?
Oh, right, no, it's a family membership.
Thanks. And how long have you been a member?
Ooh, let me see. I was certainly here 5 years ago, and it was probably 2 to 3 years more than that.
Shall I put down 8?
Oh, I remember now. It's 9, definitely. Sorry.
No problem. I've got that. And the last question in this first part is, what brought you to the club?
Sorry?
How did you find out about the club? Did you see any ads?
Well, I did actually, but I have to say I wasn't really attracted to the club because of that. It was through word of mouth.
So you were recommended by a friend?
Actually, my doctor. I'd been suffering from high blood pressure, and he said the club was very supportive of people with that condition, so I signed up.
Great, thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, for the second part of the form, I want to ask a bit more about your experience of the club.
Sure.
How often would you say you use the club?
It varies enormously, depending on how busy I am.
Of course. But on average, per month?
I'd say it averages out at twice a week.
OK, so 8 on average.
Yeah, and 4 of those are aqua aerobics classes.
That leads me to the next question. Would you say the swimming pool is the facility you make most use of?
Fair to say that, yep.
Right, thanks. And are there any facilities you don't use?
One area I realise I've never used is the tennis courts. And there's one simple reason for that.
You don't play tennis?
Actually, I'm not bad at it.
Oh.
It's that I'm not happy having to pay extra for that privilege.
Right. I've made a note of that. Thanks. Now, in the last section, are there any suggestions or recommendations you have for improvements to the club?
Only about health and fitness?
Anything at all?
Well, I'd like to see more social events.
Oh.
It isn't just a question of getting together for games or classes, but other things, you know.
Yes, sure.
And another thing that I was thinking, when I had my yoga class in the gym last night, we were all sweltering in the heat, was that I think they should put in, or, you know...
air conditioning.
That's exactly what I mean. The rooms are really light and well designed, but they do need proper installations.
Sure. Well, I've made a note of that.
Good.
So, is there anything else you'd like to suggest? About quality of service, for example?
Oh, everyone's very nice here. They couldn't be more friendly and helpful. Oh, but I tell you what, it's a shame the restaurant isn't open in the evening on Saturday. And Sunday as well, for that matter.
Oh. So, the club should...
Open it later on those days.
OK. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a telephone conversation about a job vacancy.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello, Top Job Employment Agency. Ellen Sykes speaking. How can I help you?
Good morning. My name's Steve Collins and I'm calling about the call centre job advertised in today's paper.
For an operative handling credit card inquiries?
Yes, that's right. The wages and working conditions are all in the ad, so what I'd like to know now is what the work actually consists of. I should explain that I'm a student looking for a summer job, not long-term employment.
That's okay. The people at Intercard say they've always found students to be honest, which of course is essential in this line of work, and they have the basic IT skills needed there. Apparently, there have been a few who didn't find it easy to get there on time in the morning, but in most cases their punctuality is as good as anybody else's. Anyway, about the work. And I know a bit about this because, as it happens, I've worked there myself.
Really?
Yes, for about a year. You'd find that most callers would be people wanting to check the balance on their cards, query payments made and so on.
And from those who've had their card stolen?
No, they ring another number for that, an emergency line. People also call that number if they lose their cards.
And what are most callers like? I mean, what kind of people are they?
All sorts, really. All ages, every kind of background. Though one definite trend is the change in the number of women. Nowadays, they make up around 55% of the total, whereas years ago, there used to be a majority of men calling. At one time, I heard, as many as 3/4 of all credit cards were actually held by men, but that must have been long before I was there.
It's certainly different now. So to do this job, what sort of experience do I need?
None, really. Have you got a credit card yourself?
Yes, I have.
Then you probably know quite a bit about them already. And as a student, you're obviously intelligent, which of course you need to be for the job. So after a day or so working with an experienced operative, I'm sure you'll have picked up enough to deal with routine inquiries, which of course most of them are.
But there are bound to be questions I can't deal with, At least at first. What happens then?
In that case, you can ask a supervisor. They're very helpful to new staff.
I think I like the sound of this. What do I do next?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Can you get over there for 9:45 on Monday morning for an interview?
Definitely, yes. Whereabouts are they?
In Riverside Business Park. Do you know it?
Yes, I've been there once.
How do you usually travel?
By bus.
Right. So you take either the 136 or 137 to the bus station, and when you come out of there, you turn right.
Along Orchard Road, that is. The road from the railway station?
Yes, that's right. You go past the petrol station next to the car dealers, then carry on down the road.
Do I take the first left at the main car park?
Well, you could do that, and walk up Newfield Avenue alongside the shopping centre, but it's a long way round. I'd suggest continuing along Orchard Road with the water company and then the insurance offices on your right. They used to be local government offices, by the way.
Yes, I remember those.
And you keep going until you reach the advertising agency. Now, facing that is a small road called Cherry Lane. There's a newspaper office on the corner, and opposite that is a big hotel, so you can't miss it.
And how far down that road is it?
Well, they aren't actually in Cherry Lane. You walk as far as the next junction and turn right into Almond Drive at the mail centre. Intercard is in the third building on the right between the airline offices and the shipping company.
Fine. I'll be there on Monday. Thanks very much. Bye.
Good luck. Bye.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You are going to listen to a conversation between 3 university students, Alice, Paul and Michelle. They are discussing various aspects of an upcoming biology assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, Alice. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Paul. Where are you going with all those books?
Well, I'm preparing for my marine studies paper.
Really? What are you doing your paper on? I haven't even started mine.
Well, since I've always been interested in communication, I wanted to take a closer look at how aquatic animals communicate.
Communicates? Really, Paul? You think that's interesting?
Well, yes, Alice. Actually, it's been much more interesting than I had expected it would be. I'm finding the information fascinating. I bet you'd be surprised at some of the things I've learned.
Yeah, like what?
Well, much of the world is covered by water, but it wasn't really until the first third of the 20th century that people even began to explore the depths of the ocean. Prior to its exploration, scientists just thought of it as a completely silent world. Of course, today we know it is full of sounds.
Such as?
Well, all kinds of living things in the ocean, from prawns to whales, call back and forth to each other.
How do we know that prawns talk to one another?
Good question. The answer is we listen to them. How scientists do it is through a special device called a hydrophone. Now, what a hydrophone does is convert the sound energy into electrical energy. It's a very clever device.
Kind of like a water telephone?
Well, yes. Quite like that, except the communication is only one way.
Sounds more like spying on animals to me.
Well, I suppose it is to a certain degree. Scientists can hear all kinds of sounds. Grunting, crackling, buzzing. It turns out that the ocean is quite a noisy place. Many underwater sounds have been identified, but even more still await classification. Fish in a public aquarium are quite, well, talkative. So scientists have been able to record their sounds and match them with mystery calls heard from the open sea.
So who's the noisiest in the underwater world? I'll bet it's the dolphin.
You're right, the dolphin is noisy, but by far the most widespread and persistent noisemakers are the smaller animals living in the sea. Not fish, but an animal that lives on the sea floor and grows no more than about 5 centimetres. Here, have a look at this table I've started.
Ah, I see. The snapping shrimp is the noisiest sea creature. This is interesting. It makes its sharp snapping sound with its enlarged claw, which also functions like a water pistol.
Yes, I was reading millions of these animals just offshore have been known to frighten people walking along the beach in Japan.
And this is interesting. It says here that seahorses in an aquarium made such a loud noise that people could hear them from across the room. These little creatures are amazing.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Say, Paul, your early research has really prompted me to get started on my own paper. You look like you've already done quite a lot of work on it, but the assignment isn't due for at least another month. Is that right?
Let's see, Michelle. I think you may be a little wrong there. Let me get my class folder and we'll have a look.
I know that our class participation is worth 30%, but what's this assignment worth? Isn't it 40%?
Here it is. Yes. Actually, it's worth 30%. It's the second assignment due later on that's worth 40%. It says here, okay, there are 3 pieces of assessment. There's the 2 assignments and the in-class feedback on student oral presentations, which forms part of assignment 2. Now it says that the first written assignment is composed of 3 parts.
Yes, I recall the professor talking about those, especially the word length for part 1. The research essay, it's 1200, isn't it? It's due in week 6?
Yes, that's correct for part 1, but only 800 for part 2, the field study, which is due in week 7.
Oh, that's bad news. I thought I had much more time than that. I don't know how I could have been so wrong. I guess I need to purchase a diary or I'm going to get left behind.
Yes, I write all my due dates on a monthly calendar which hangs on the wall next to my desk. I found that this has helped me to stay organised. I usually divide the project into weeks. Each week, I set aside some time for all of my assignments. For example, Part 3, the report on findings, isn't due till week 9, but I've already started working on it.
Wow, I'm impressed. I guess you lead a pretty worry-free life.
Not at all. It just means I get a little more sleep than most students around the due date of the assignment.
Well, Paul, you certainly have inspired me. Yeah, me too. I'll be purchasing a desk calendar as soon as I get a chance.
Well, I'm off. Alice, Michelle, it was great talking to both of you. All the best with your assignments.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
Listen to the last part of the lecture.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Last time I said that a lot of Irish people left the country and went to England, America and many other foreign countries. Today I'd like to talk about the emigration. The effects of immigration were not all bad. The immigrants experienced a lot of hardship in their new countries. There is a famous story about a park in Shanghai where Chinese and dogs were not allowed. Well, in England, until into the 1950s, signs for jobs sometimes read, "Irish need not apply." The immigrants often experienced discrimination, but they formed many organisations to look after their fellow immigrants. Many of these organisations later became very important. In America, the Irish chose politics as the way forward, and significant cities were controlled by Irish politicians. This movement reached its peak with the election of John F. Kennedy in 1960. His grandparents came from Ireland, and his election had a significant impact in Ireland, helping the process of recovery of self-confidence which we have today. Today, there are 70 million people of Irish descent living outside Ireland. In America alone, there are 40 million people, and 10 million of these people have a 100% Irish background. They carried the culture of their home country with them and adapted it to their new home. They made changes which would be unthinkable in the home country, and we often laughed at the Yankees' Irishness. In fact, any immigrant who came back to live in Ireland, often after many years, found it very difficult to fit into Irish society again. They had been changed by the experience. These immigrants have always had an interest in the old country. The American letter was a letter containing dollars sent back to one's family. More recently, President Clinton has been very influential in bringing peace to the north of Ireland. Riverdance itself was the idea of a dancer who was American, who applied American methods to traditional dancing, and the fusion was immediately popular. Modern Ireland has been able to use the disaster of the last century to learn modern marketing techniques and apply them, without at the same time losing what is distinctive about itself. Riverdance is a demonstration of that distinctiveness.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it